The patrol boat that suddenly disappears. The helicopter that goes down. The spy operation that is abruptly rolled up, blinding the Chinese intelligence service in yet another country. Officially, the Chinese hadn't even accused the hegemon of any involvement in such incidents, but that only meant that they didn't want to give any publicity to the hegemon, didn't want to boost his reputation or prestige among those who feared China in these years since the conquest of India and Indochina. They almost certainly knew who was the source of their woes. Indeed, they probably gave Bean's little force the credit for problems that were actually the ordinary accidents of life. The death of the foreign minister of a heart attack in Washington, D.C., only minutes before meeting with the U.S. president. They might really think Peter Wiggin's reach was that long, or that he thought the Chinese foreign minister, a party hack, was worth assassinating. And the fact that a devastating drought was in its second year in India, forcing the Chinese either to buy food on the open market or allow relief workers from Europe and the Americas into the newly captured and still rebellious subcontinent. Maybe they even imagined that Peter Wiggin could control the monsoon rains. Bean had no such illusions. Peter Wiggin had all kinds of contacts throughout the world, a collection of informants that was gradually turning into a serious network of spies. But as far as Bean could tell, Peter was still just playing a game. Oh, Peter thought it was real enough, but he had never seen what happened in the real world. He had never seen people die as a result of his orders. Bean had, and it was not a game. He heard his men approaching. He knew without looking that they were very close, for even here, in supposedly safe territory, an advanced staging area in the mountains of Mindanao in the Philippines, they moved as silently as possible. But he also knew that he had heard them before they expected him to, for his senses had always been unusually keen. Not the physical sense organs. His ears were quite ordinary, but the ability of his brain to recognize even the slightest variation from the ambient sound. That's why he raised a hand in greeting to men who were only just emerging from the forest behind him. He could hear the changes in their breathing. Sighs, almost silent chuckles that told him they recognized that he had caught them again. As if it were a grown-up game of Mother May I, and Bean always seemed to have eyes in the back of his head. Suryawang came up beside him as the men filed by in 2 columns to board the choppers, heavily laden for the mission ahead. "Sir," said Suryawang. That made Bean turn. Suryawang never called him sir. His second-in-command, a Thai only a few years older than Bean, was now half a head shorter. He saluted Bean and then turned toward the forest he had just come from. When Bean turned to face the same direction, he saw Peter Wiggin, the hegemon of Earth, the brother of Ender Wiggin who saved the world from the Formic invasion only a few years before. Peter Wiggin, the conniver and gamesman. What was he playing at now? "I hope you aren't insane enough to be coming along on this mission," said Bean. "What a cheery greeting," said Peter. "That is a gun in your pocket, so I guess you aren't happy to see me." Bean hated Peter most when Peter tried to banter, so he said nothing. Waited. "Julian Delphiki, there's been a change of plans," said Peter. Calling him by his full name, as if he were Bean's father. Well, Bean had a father. Even if he didn't know he had one until after the war was over, and they told him that Nikolai Delphiki wasn't just his friend, he was his brother. But having a father and mother show up when you're 11 isn't the same as growing up with them. No one had called Bean Julian Delphiki when he was little. No one had called him anything at all, until they tauntingly called him Bean on the streets of Rotterdam.